Caddis Maximus here. This time I'm doing a quick review, or maybe more of a regular review of the Knipex or Knipex wrench pliers. I don't own many Knipex tools, but they are definitely professional grade and it's easily as good as just anybody else's tools that are professional or high end. But really, what I know them for is two things. One is the Oetiker hose clamps and the pliers that are associated with those, and these wrench pliers. So I guess Knipex would be like a competition to Channel Lock and kind of companies like that. But they do have this unique patented design which does work pretty well. The only caveat is that these are some of Knipex's more expensive tools. Looking online, this small 180 millimeter or 7-inch was about $35. This 10-inch one or 250 millimeter was $50. And they make large sizes. There were some huge ones, I think 18 inches long. There were some really big ones, but that pair of wrenches was several $100s. And so that's one thing to kind of keep an eye out for. They had a 3-piece set of these and it was $150. So these definitely are not cheap, but they do offer quite a few advantages. So one thing we'll look over here is that they do have an interesting kind of wave handle design. It's more apparent on this set, and that does work pretty well, so I like the ergonomics. They have ones with big, rubber grip, soft grip handles, so I like that option as well. And what makes these special and why I like them is they can be used as any kind of normal set of pliers, but they use a combination of mechanisms. One is a channel lock style or tongue and groove style, but instead they just have this little billet piece that has little teeth that integrate into it. So there's 2 teeth on each side of the billet, so 4 teeth that engage, and they engage about 3/4 of the way up, and that's pretty strong. And it just uses a flat piece of metal screwed in as the spring, and they're pretty easy to adjust. You can just push it and they hold in, and if you end up right in the middle of a spot, it's pretty easy to get them to snap in. They of course have the usual advertising about how everything's so excellent. But any manufacturer will do that. These are well made. They're chrome vanadium steel, forged, properly heat treated. They're using nice dies that are pretty well defined, and quality machine work such as cutting the slots and broaching the head. So how these work is you have like a channel lock, but instead of the lever being directly connected to the jaw is on a track, kind of like a crescent wrench. And so what the handle has is this little nub here that integrates into the back of the jaw. The jaw is shaped here, and then the little lobe is offset, so it will stop properly, and so you won't have to worry about it like falling apart if it's in the middle position. It has only a finite amount of range, but the range of the handle and the jaw movement is more than each step in the teeth here. So you literally do get a infinite range. It'll do all sizes through its maximum and minimum capacities. The moving jaw is indeed forged. It's very high quality, and what I like is that they have a very long engagement in the track so that you have less worry about it deflecting or jamming, and over longer term usage having high pressure points causing little areas where it likes to get stuck. As far as any weaknesses to these, I would say obviously you'd be right here, right at the beginning of the lobe, both on this side and on this side, just because that's where the steel is the thinnest. And if you were to break these, putting a lot of force or such as hammering them, these are not meant to be hammered on. They're not meant to have cheater bars put on the handles. But if they were to fail, that would be the obvious point, just because where it's thinnest. But they really do, or really are pretty strong. And what's nice about these is they are kind of like a universal set of pliers. And crescent wrenches, etc. They do replace a variety of tools, and what's the big difference is that the jaws move in parallel. And as far as pliers and that style of tool is concerned, it's actually pretty rare. As far as I can tell, besides these Knipexes, these old Sargents are one of the only other sets of pliers that or anything that could be considered a plier, that has jaws that actually move parallel, so they are always flat with whatever parallel with whatever you're working with. And so that was one of the initial attractions to these. I would not say that they are as robust as an equivalent crescent wrench. Say this is a 10-inch. Actual crescent wrench, has a lot of steel in it. and they are very strong. So I would not say that these could take the absolute same amount of force for equivalent handle length as a specific crescent wrench. And that would be in regard specifically to using these with fasteners, which they do work great with. I would say that they are easily as strong as an equivalent size set of channel locks or tongue and groove pliers. And then that's one of the other advantages I really liked about these. Isn't the smooth jaw. I'd like to see a pair of these that does have serrated jaws, but it's the difference that you don't have this arc. So, you know, channel locks, they only will grab in parallel at certain size points, you know, each of the slots and the grooves here. And so these will grab with a full length no matter what size you're working with. And part of the reason they do work so well is kind of like those pipe pliers. The handle to the direction of force is quite steep, and that's because of this little peg. Here's a little pivot point, and there's the peg very close to the pivot point versus the overall length of the handle. So on their advertising, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, and you can really feel it because each step you move the handle. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. You can swing the handle a large amount, but the jaw only moves a little bit. So apparently that's a 1-to-10 ratio, and so that gives you a huge boost in leverage by a factor of 10. So you really have a lot of grip strength, and as using these as general pliers, and why I suggest they make ones that just have more kind of serrated jaws like other pliers, is they would be great because you just get a huge amount of gripping force. And as far as the side strength, they're great just for anything. And they advertise that from using as hand presses, the breaking tile, to everything but a hammer. And I can believe it. They really are well made. They charge quite a bit of money for them, but I can understand if they're going to use, you know, it's all going to be top quality, essentially Snap-on grade. They're not perfect in all situations. Obviously, they have a very large head if you need a smaller, finer set of pliers. Obviously, there's times where you need, you know, a more easy to access, wider range, and those type of situations. But that being said, they really just work well. If you have some kind of piece of wire or something, there's a variety of pliers, vice grips to use. But what's nice about these is you can get a big chunk of wire right in the jaws, and you really have a lot of grip strength, and it's really been handy for round stock like that. There's another advantage because they have such a high leverage ratio, like this pretty thick piece of wire. If we want to do something like bend it straight, if I can get it balanced just right here, you can use them as a press. So we just did it to that step, and then you slide them up. We'll put this back in here like so. I have to get it just right. Almost. And these I've actually used in these kind of situations quite a bit, is when I want to straighten out a piece of metal, whether it's sheet metal or a piece of wire. It's pretty hard to keep this in focus and hold all this at the same time. Here we go. It's always a fine, there we go. Oh. You just get a lot of force, so you can take a piece of that big old bend that was in there. And that's actually not so bad. Just using those to straighten out that big kink in the end. And so that's what's really nice about them, is you just have a huge amount of force. They're really easy to adjust. I did want to mention that. Is you just press the button and then the handle just basically slides back and forth. They have a bit of play in them. That's actually really good. This looseness in here actually means that they're going to be more reliable for you. They do have a nice little gap under the button, and I also wanted to mention that. That way, if they actually get dropped in mud, you can work the button a few times, and it will push the grit out through this little gap. And so I would think, in the way that they're designed, that they really are pretty good, and they'll handle any kind of abuse that a similar set of tongue and groove pliers, channel locks, or any other pliers for that matter. And one other advantage is, like those channel lock pipe pliers I had reviewed earlier, these and that 10-to-1 ratio and the way the force is delivered more linearly towards the upper jaw, when you grip onto something, these have the same properties where you can just put force literally on one handle and hold it there. And so one example would be such as this. There we go. I do like the wide range of these. They're kind of, you know, they're pretty easy to adjust. They're not bad. So if we do something like this, where I grab one side of the nut with this set of pliers, and the other side of the nut with this set of pliers, you can see that I'm just pressing and holding with the outer handles, not even touching the inner handles, and they really do hold parallel, and they do work pretty well on hex fasteners and other shapes. I will have to admit that. And then obviously if I release the pressure, they don't hold on anymore. They do have relatively thin jaws for their size, so they'll reach in the many situations. The one thing I would mention is, even though this tool is strong, that you may have fasteners such as softer nuts that are large, but when you put a huge amount of force with such a narrow jaw, oftentimes, even though they hold real parallel, you're still risking rounding them out. And so in those situations, a crescent wrench might be better just because they have wider jaws and a closer engagement, and of course they can be tightened down perfectly tight as well. That being said, I really have had a high degree of success using these to break bolts and stubborn fasteners. Usually, as with any high quality socket or anything else, the fastener will turn or it will just round out. But these tend to work a bit better just because they're binding and grabbing onto the fastener so tightly. And then the harder you turn, the harder these grab. So as far as a lot of the Knipex tools, they all seem pretty great, but these are really is what I think how the brand has set themselves apart, because this really is a nice design. And then they backed up a smart and very effective design with a high build quality and high quality materials, which is really what's necessary. So it isn't some kind of like good design but poorly built, or a poor design that's well built. This is a good design that is well built. And so generally I'd recommend them. They are expensive, but they really are made well. They have a good warranty. And more importantly, they'll actually work, and they'll work after they've been beating around your toolbox for years. They'll work when you have certain frustrating situations and you just know that you can rely on them and grab them even after they maybe been left out in the rain or have gotten packed with dirt. And they're pretty easy to adjust to boot, so you can engage in your work a little bit more quickly and with a little bit less fidgeting around. I guess time will tell. I did mention the one weak point with the thinness of the metal, and the little stop die, I'm sure is designed to be strong enough to I believe that the handle would break before the little pin strips out the teeth in there. I did want to mention that as well. Anyway, that's my review of the Knipex wrench pliers. I really appreciate everybody watching. Please subscribe. Catus Maximus out.